Hello, everybody. Welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Pellavita. I will be your moderator for today's show, at least through half of it. The other half will be by Mark Lee because I have to run to another show, which is going to be the timeshare show, which comes right after that. So with that, our topic today will be the media. Is it being bought by the U.S. government? As this was an article in the New York Times, which said NPR is a liberal media basically purchased and owned by the U.S. government. Same with PBS. And then you find out actually ABC, CBS, and NBC all are being funded by our U.S. governments. With that, we'll bring in a person who has more experience than I do, our subject matter expert. Over 100 years of broadcasting experience has been in this area. We'll bring in none other than Mark Lee. And then from Canada, somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience there, but has a lot of experience life, we're going to bring in Sasha Starr. But I'll start with you, Mark, because this is a big article in it was in the New York Times, and it dealt with NPR. And somebody was accusing NPR of having, quote, a liberal bias as it has big funding from the United States government. What was your thought on NPR?
So NPR is actually National Public Radio, so it is a government-funded entity. I mean, it's always been set up that way. It definitely funds a number of radio stations around the country. My parents actually had an NPR-affiliated radio station back in the mid-'70s. It was on the air till the mid-'80s. I mean, but there are other ones that are even more liberal. They want to go by liberal politics. I would say that actually NPR can be somewhat center in some of their politics and all along those lines. But if they want to go super liberal, try checking out Pacifica, because Pacifica Radio is also out there and is got a number of radio stations, and that is definitely one that is much more on the liberal focus in terms of the politics and all along those lines. So definitely there for a number of things that are given in terms of finances, and a lot of times organizations are funded, and they are funded from a lot of different sources. I know that even Rick yesterday was talking about the kind of decline, and he can go into that more than I can, of some of the more conservative media outlets, whether that's True Social or whether that's some of the other ones that are out there, because apparently their listenerships have been declining, because I think some people are wanting to get a different viewpoints, and they want to hear different viewpoints along the lines, and sometimes they want the journalists that are more objective, but there are a number of journalistic outlets out there that have one point of view or another. So a lot of times you are looking at your sources and trying to see where the sources are coming from and making hopefully your own decisions as to what you believe or don't believe.
So True Social dropped another 16%. It's at $27. People have paid as much as $97 for it. Nobody not named Trump or Kushner has ever made money investing in Donald Trump.
So you're not a fan of purchasing True Social. Well, let's ask Sasha Starr, because he's our financial expert who runs the investment show. What are your thoughts of buying this new stock called True Social?
I'll tell you, it all comes down to valuations, and based on their income and losses, even if that stock would cost now 50 cents a share, it would be grossly overpriced. So if you're planning to buy it now at whatever, $27, $17, $7, or even $1.50 a share, you are buying yourself losses. So unless you're devoted to Trump and prepared to anyway put somehow your money into his campaign or for his privileged jail service or whatever you have in your mind, and you're not planning to make any money on these shares, then welcome and scoop them all and buy them all and just drive the stock up to $500 a share. Enjoy yourself. Now, if you're looking at that as an investment, it's overpriced even at 50 cents. That's my personal opinion, not probably shared by the management of Pod TV.
Well, I don't know about. I mean, True Social is not something I'm going to take a gamble at. But my question to you, I'll go to Mark on this because it deals with the media in general. Are we divided as to now the radio and TV you listen to either conservative or liberal? In other words, we don't really have groups that are in between. So are we looking at a media that's basically divided, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, the media is very much divided, just like society is divided. So, yeah, even if you go on apps like Clubhouse or some of the other apps that are out there, you will see a number of people that have varying viewpoints, and they oftentimes you have to kind of sift through the viewpoints that you hear and decide what you believe is the truth and all along those lines. But I mean, that isn't altogether that new or anything in that space. I mean, many of us remember when there was even American-oriented radio stations that were given messages of the war that was definitely going to be put out from a government perspective. I mean, how many of us here on this call have remembered a thing called Voice of America, which is still out there and everything? So this notion of something that is politically oriented is not new. And I think even where Sasha was originally from, that there have been a number of avenues that were putting out state-supported news and all in that space. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Putin is still putting out his state-supported news out of Russia and all in that space. But you can correct me if I'm wrong in that space. But that's not Russia. It's a number of places.
RT, the Russian Times. Yes.
One problem is that, yeah, it would be nice to have centrist sources of news, but get information from both sides. But the right-wing media has been contaminated with BS. And, you can read the Wall Street Journal and there's quality reporting and some probably quality opinions in the Wall Street Journal. But then you look at things like the Gateway Pundit or Breitbart, and they're just contaminated with BS that is hard to stomach. So you're driven by default to mainstream media, not all of which is great, but is more truth-oriented than some of the junky conservative sites. So you're left consuming more liberal media.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are your thoughts about this? And I'll go back to Mark on this one. Government-supported media. In other words, this took place when Romney was running for president. He said that the government should not be funding PBS. And obviously now the government also funds NPR. And my argument is the government is
to the tune of 3% of their budget.
Right.
Okay, fine. Since it represents such a small amount, Rick, why not have it zero? In other words, it won't affect PBS. It will not affect NPR. Why is the federal government, which is broke, I'm going to say, funding media at all?
Maybe that's a good idea because that takes away the cudgel for conservatives to beat people over the head with saying it's government funded. If maybe for losing the 3% takes away the argument. I've heard the argument that I don't agree with, that Roe v. Wade was actually terrible for liberals because for the past 50 years, it gave conservatives a baseball bat to beat on liberals with, that, to get their people all upset about abortion. And without Roe v. Wade, you took away this weapon. I don't buy that, but it's maybe a better argument for NPR.
Well, what happened with PBS is they defended it, and the president of PBS was going, "Oh no, we can't. We need the money. Look at Big Bird. You're against Big Bird. You're against Big Bird." And I'm thinking Mitt Romney was right. There's absolutely no reason today that the federal government funds PBS. In the meantime,
doesn't the federal government
PBS makes about?
But doesn't the federal government fund also the major network? So then right now, and I know that on one of the other shows,
I'm glad you brought that
about
yes.
this notion of what's going on in the campaigns, because I guarantee you that if I turn on my TV, which is not on right now and everything, I will see an ad at some point from Josh Stein, from Mark Robinson, from even some organizations that let you know that they are not representing the campaign, but they are representing whatever the special interest group is, and they have got millions, if not billions of dollars in advertising. So the federal government, in a lot of ways, is funding regular media as well through their advertising dollars.
Yeah, right.
So since the very beginning of TV, the government has indirectly funded the broadcast networks,
Yes.
because the government said, you can have these wavelengths to
Right.
transmit your signals on when everybody had antennas. And this is a valuable thing, but we're going to give it to you for free as long as you provide the public service for Americans, which turned out to be doing the national news. You provide the news, you get these airwaves, which are worth billions of bucks, for free. So that the government has been subsidizing ABC, NBC, CBS for 70 years.
Not only that, but even in that same line, if you are west of the Mississippi, you'll have a letter that is usually beginning with a K in your call letters, and if you're east of the Mississippi, you have a W, and that was set up by the government as well. So they even had these ways of regulating how you were, what kind of naming you had as well. So that is definitely something that exists as well, even though some people have bent those rules.
And I assume the government has made the radio waves for KOA, KTV, for free too.
Yes, that is true. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah, Sasha.
I think you have to understand that most of the people, they want to get ready-made news that they will consume in 10, 15 minutes, and that's it. So some of them are looking for CNN to provide that news portion. That would be good enough for them. Some others will go probably to Fox News. Some others will go to any other stations and so on. Now, those people who really want to be objectively well informed and understand what's really happening, they have to go a little bit deeper than this bits and pieces, 10, 15 minutes a day. For example, the Republicans, whether it's MAGA or all Republicans, they are absolutely against helping to Ukraine. Okay. Now, Biden administration, okay, they want to help Ukraine, but they can't because the budget is not approved and so on. So they have at least what they say, some monetary constraints. However, even if they would provide help, they attach the requirement that the American help will not be directed towards Russian-based targets. Let's read now what's happened in the last day or two. Norway, which is a member of NATO, says it is handing over F-16s for Ukraine, as many as 22 for the beginning, for strikes deep into Russian rear. And it's Norwegian Foreign Minister Espen Barth Eide has said that the F-16 aircraft that his nation would provide to Ukraine will assist Ukraine's armed forces in landing strikes deeper into Russian territory. So this is a huge contradiction to both Republicans who are saying no more help to Ukraine, and it contradicts even the Biden administration, who says, okay, maybe there will be a help, but no hitting the Russian-based targets. So with Norway, there will be a lot of other European countries that will provide help. For example, UK, France, Germany, they're willing to provide long-range missiles, which we are capable to hit faraway targets in Russia, primarily in Crimea, which Crimea is, in my opinion, the first one that will fall to Ukraine, because once this bridge with Kerch will be distracted, there will be absolutely no way to sustain Crimea for Russia, and it will be taken and controlled by Ukrainians. So here you have to go a little bit deeper to understand really what's happening. You have to read what's happening with the Russian barbarous bombardments of Ukrainian cities. They understand that they cannot take over on the battlefield. So they are using absolutely terrorist strategy, and all what's happening in the Middle East with Palestinians, Hamas, and all that stuff, this Iran, this is all tactics of Russians. Russians are encouraging Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas and all this structure. This is why they have to be defeated on Middle East grounds and Ukrainian grounds, and finish with this major threat to Western civilizations with all these
but Sasha,
threats and so on.
But Sasha, along those same lines, and this is a question, this is the media show for both you and Rick and everything along those lines. Yes, when you get to the national news, all the news will pretty much be around Ukraine and Russia and the various conflicts and all along those lines. But I can guarantee you that if I turn on the news, well, actually I'll be at work at that time, but if I was to turn on the news at 6 or if I was to turn it on at 10 or 11, most of the local news will be about the crime of the day in this city. I imagine it's the same there in Toronto. I imagine it's the same there in LA, because there's a saying that I hear Nick using quite a bit, and I've even heard Kim use it as well, which is if it bleeds, it leads. So there's a lot of things that'll be around the crime of the day. And I'm not saying that crime isn't important and all along those lines, but I'm just wondering, isn't that part of the problem? And that's why some people get frustrated with the media, because they know that a lot of what they are going to hear won't be the positive news of the community or even things that are pertinent to the bigger issues and everything, but it'll be a lot of things that are centered around whatever is happening in your community, particularly in the crime element.
So I can't stand local news for that reason. It's not really news. It's just, somebody got in a car wreck. Well, yeah, that happens all the time. My wife can no longer take national news because it bums her out it freaks her out because the world seems like it's on fire. My wife, who never in the world has watched golf, turned on golf because it was calming. So yeah, it's a problem, and you don't get the in-depth. You have to hunt down like BBC News or Al Jazeera if you want in-depth reporting on stuff. And even then, they can't cover it's a problem because the world's complicated and we don't have the attention span or the resources to learn as much about all this stuff as we probably should.
That's very true. But speaking of being complicated, there was a major interview. It was a person of Indian descent. I think it was on 60 Minutes. I did not watch the interview and everything, but he wrote a book that is about his stabbing not that long ago and everything. And there was actually death sentences on him from, I want to say, some of the people in the Middle East and everything. But a number of people were probably having their faces glued to the TV, particularly for the 60 Minutes interview, as he talked about his first nearly fatal knife attack, that being Salman Rushdie and everything. And he even said he had a premonition on being attacked just days before the stabbing. And it does look like he lost one of his eyes and everything. Yeah. But I was wondering, did anybody watch that interview, and what was the nature of the interview, and what did you think of the interview?
I didn't see it, but Salman Rushdie's been under a fatwa, which is like a bounty for his death, since the 1980s, because he wrote a book called The Satanic Verses, which made fun of certain aspects of the Muslim religion. He wasn't being mean to the Muslim religion. He was just trying to write a good book, and it pissed off some people. And yeah, some lunatic finally acted on it. I mean, he's had bodyguards. Somebody finally got past his bodyguards. He's had bodyguards for decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, getting back to the media, is radio funded by conservative bias? In other words, are we looking at the radio industry basically being a subversive industry today, Mark?
Which radio are you talking about? There's different radio. There is talk radio that is very conservative based, but there is also talk radio that has a more liberal basis. Are we talking the Rush Limbaugh type of shows? Or are we talking the shows that are a little bit more on the liberal side and all along those lines. So definitely a lot of radio has its own biases as well. I'm a big fan of community radio because I've worked in community radio before, and I'm a big fan of college radio, which sometimes is affiliated with NPR or the Prometheus Network or a number of other things in that space. So definitely there are these sources that help these stations get some of their news as well, because a lot of times they don't have the resources to get the national news. So they sometimes have to depend on some of the networks that will provide them a point of view. Because like I said, I do know that there are some, even locally, the local NPR stations like UNC and definitely WNCU and a number of others, they will sometimes get their reports from Pacifica, who I mentioned earlier, or they might get them from NPR, or they might get them from some other networks that are out there. And there are some similar to that that are in the conservative space as well. So a lot of these stations have their own individual biases.
Radio has been shaped by two geniuses, Howard Stern and Rush Limbaugh. And Howard Stern proved that if you can be consistently funny and obnoxious and have boobies in the studio, people will listen for 4 hours a day. But now you have to pay to get Howard Stern because he's on satellite. Rush Limbaugh showed that if you can capture conservative white resentment, guys will listen for 3 hours a day. And, people in their car for 3 hours a day, you got truckers, you got people who can't afford satellite radio. And like liberals tried it with Air America in the 90s, I think, and couldn't make a go of it. So, and radio is kind of a fallen medium. Radio was the thing 100 years ago. Then go ahead.
Yeah, in that same space and everything. Now we've got thousands of different outlets out there. Everybody and their mother's got a YouTube channel. Everybody and their mother has got these different other outlets. You mentioned satellite radio, and yes, a number of people have satellite radio. I know my brother sometimes listens to various sports shows that are satellite oriented because he is a big fan of sports, particularly around the NFL and things in that space. So he's sometimes listening there. He also listens to some political shows because he's got some politically minded ideas as well. So yeah, a lot of times people are creating their own silos. So there's like all these millions of silos out there that everybody has in that space. I can tell you this, Nick, but some people would even argue that that's what Pod TV is, because we've got people of different avenues and all in that space. We've got people on both the left and the right on this network, but it then becomes a question as to how many people are actually listening, which is the question that my friends always ask me. And
that's a good question. As technology improves, we'll get more net. We'll get better ideas of how many listeners. I know in 2023 we had 2.3 million that I can verify. But let me give you an idea of one of the real problems. Like Sasha does a show with Ken Reagan on chess. Okay, I redistribute it through Facebook groups to Feedy, which only has 7,000 people. The USCF Facebook group only has, 5,000 people or 13,000. But Sasha, here's the distribution group. I sent it to Chess Move of the Day. It took it. Chess Move of the Day has 137,000 members. Okay. Now, when you redistribute, so now his chess show with Ken Reagan goes to Chess Move of the Day. That has 137,000 potential viewers. We get nothing back as to how many people actually watched it.
Right.
You see what I mean? And that has been a big problem when what I call Facebook redistribution groups. On Vimeo, I get the people who watch. In other words, they say, okay, this amount of people watch. But on a lot of our distribution sources, especially Facebook redistribution groups, which is the best place to actually send data to, there's no report back. Now, this is as we sit today in 2024. I believe in the next 5 years, we will actually get data back saying, okay, you had, 5,000 people watched your show, or 10,000 or 100,000, right now we don't know. But also it's really weird is that Chess Move of the Day and Chess Move of the Day has 137,000 and chess.com. By the way, I also sent it to chess.com. They only have like 50,000 people. It's just really weird to see some of these niche Facebook groups that have more members than some of the more well-known groups. Also, yeah.
It's the fragmentation. We grew up with 4 channels, the 3 broadcast networks, and then your local channel, which was always boring. And now we literally have more than 1 million channels with everybody's podcasts and with OnlyFans and getting eyeballs. What I should do is I should come to North Carolina. I should have Jacoby take me hostage at gunpoint on top of a local skyscraper and say, we need 1 million views for this, or I'm going to kill Rick.
Right. Then you'll get it. I mean, obviously that people do go for the weird stuff, and it's just the nature of this particular beast. When we put on the show, it was actually this show, it was the media show, that Donald Trump was suspending his campaign on April the 1st. Do you know he actually did that? I think, Rick, you sent it to me, and I was going I was doing it just as a lark. I had no idea that he actually sent a letter out like that.
No hesitation.
But our ratings went off the roof. This thing just, it lit up the boards, and I'm going we had so many viewers and followers, I couldn't even keep track of them. And it was on a stupid subject. It was a lie, basically. Donald Trump
was a lie, and a lot of stuff that's on the network is lies and mistruths. And by the way, Jacoby brought up a good point in the chat and everything. He says the reason it believes it leads is due to us. We watch car races, which is very true. I was actually watching
because you're waiting for somebody to
get the car crashes, and we're waiting to see the car crash and they flame out. And we watch football for the big hits. And I hate to tell him because I know that he watches and is involved with the baseball team and everything here in the local area, but even though it is a rarity that a lot of times people are wanting to see the batter get hit, and sometimes they don't want the batter to get fatally hit or anything, but that definitely drives up some of the ratings of the games as well, even in baseball. And we all know about hockey and its notorious ability to have people get in those fights and all along those lines. And I can say the same for basketball as well. So definitely.
But also, if it's human interest, it leads. Caitlin Clark, her championship game broke records for all collegiate games in history, including the men's game, and I think was in the top 5 of all basketball games ever, including the NBA. When the Taylor Swift, Jason or Travis Kelce romance, that thing made people go crazy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Sasha.
There are a lot of chess broadcasts about the candidate tournament, about all kind of tournaments in Europe and elsewhere, where top grandmasters are playing, starting with Carlsen and many other top grandmasters. However, the most popular shows or streams, so to speak, on chess internet are broadcasts by Canadian girls, their sisters, and they're not particularly good at chess at all. I mean, not even grandmasters, any solid master would beat them easily, but it doesn't matter. People love what they're doing on TV because they're commenting and they're talking, they're babbling, and so on. And they're touching their hair, they're touching their dresses here and there, and that keeps people for hours just watching, not necessarily playing them a game, but just watching how they play others and talking about that. So this is kind of a entertainment where there is no virtue, but
you gotta have that visual.
You should do strip chess programming where lose your shirt.
Depends on who's stripping. I don't know that people necessarily want to see Sasha, but maybe there's some attractive young lady and all in that space. They might want to see that and everything. But I do remember, and Jacoby can correct me, but wasn't it a very popular pool show that used to exist and many people watched because they loved seeing the woman that was commentating? I think they might have even had the notion of the person coming out almost as the boxing ladies. I think it was America Up All Night. It had Up All Night in the title, but I know it was a popular pool show and all in that space. It was either pool or poker, but it was one of those two P games and everything.
I mean, first off, don't kink shame. Somebody might want to see Sasha all butt naked. I mean, you never know. Sasha, go ahead and try it one day. Start pulling down the one button at a time. But yes, sex sells. That's another thing. So you got injuries, crashes, sex sells. That's what we watch. I mean, just what it is.
But
Caillou is never going to be the top dog compared to Beavis and Butthead. But Caillou is a great program that's about an innocent little kid trying to learn the world. It's not what a lot of people want to watch.
There's a show, I don't know if it's on anymore, called Naked News, where it's just the news of the day. I think it might be out of Canada, and the female anchor just slowly over the course of a 20-minute broadcast just gets naked. And you know, I mean, people like to be reminded that they can get horny and then like run off to the internet and look at like more naked people.
But Rick and Sophie and even Sasha, one of the other things that a lot of people got frustrated in the media is that sometimes failure also is what gets people up in arms and all along those lines. Because one of the things that I had seen, because I mentioned on one of the other shows that I watched part of the special, but I did not watch all of it. So I didn't see the controversy. But apparently there was a number of people that were upset at the Billy Joel special because apparently CBS decided to pull it at the last second. So the people were watching a very popular song named Piano Man, and they did not get to see it because for whatever reasons, CBS, maybe it had some other pressing issues that were going on. So they pulled it, and a number of people, you can look it online right now, are quite upset at CBS because they're going like, hey, wait a minute, that's my favorite song. I've always wanted to hear that song from Madison Square Garden. And a lot of people are frustrated, and it's all over Twitter and everything else in that space, the fact that CBS pulled that off. So that is something that can also get you in trouble in the media as well.
Yeah, there was the first famous instance of this was, I think, called the Heidi game. And there was an NFL game in the 60s that was down to, you know, the last few seconds, and it was on the line, and they cut away from the game to start broadcasting the movie Heidi, which is about, you know, a girl who runs around the Swiss Alps and has adventures.
Yeah. So that can happen as well. There are different reasons that people do that. Hey, Toby, I said I was going to mention this to you and I would love to hear Sasha's thoughts about this as well. Because one of the things that has been in the media lately, has been in the media for a while, is this whole notion of Apple and Epic Games. And apparently Apple is claiming that Epic is trying to micromanage, and we heard Nick earlier talk about micromanage, its business operations in a new court filing. So apparently Apple and Epic are at each other. So since this is the media show, what is our thoughts about this latest game war in that whole space between Apple and Epic? And I guess Apple is saying, wait a minute, y'all are micromanaging what y'all are doing.
I mean, if I remember, I think it's still the same controversy that's been going on for a while now. Because what it is Epic wants to have an in-game store. And Apple does. So stuff, and that's all it is with Epic, is they're trying to sue to make sure that they can do that. Apple doesn't want them to do that. It's just it's all about money. Apple, and then what that opens the door for is that all these other games that have the in-game apps or in-game purchases, like on the Android application now, because Epic and Google went at it for a while. Yeah, it's going to open the door so now other companies can now sell in-game purchases on their applications. That's all it is. On the Apple side of things. They can do that on the Android side of things.
Speaking of that and everything, because one of the things I've been seeing, and Rick, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I did see your hand, Sasha, is I'm seeing a lot of people that are in that AI space. I know we talk about AI quite a bit on media and on Pod TV, and a number of folks are even buying AI apps and AI situations. I think there's even a whole games around AI as well. So I just wanted your notion of that, because I think you can even buy some AI characters if you want to, AI storylines. But what is your thought?
You can buy AI girlfriends. I look at the adult sector of AI because it changes and gets weirder hour by hour. Like yesterday, the AI, somebody decided to do spacesuit porn, where it's a lady in a spacesuit and she's up to, you know, what people do. The day before that, it was kimono porn. But like you go to these sites and it's like build your own girlfriend, lonely guy, and she'll talk to you and she'll take, I guess, I don't know, I haven't done it. But she'll probably do whatever you ask her to. And yeah.
But I mean, it's not like a real flesh person. So what is you?
But that's coming. We're looking at like a whole like new world of like wondrous things and horrible things. Like when you're able in 10 years to buy like an add-on for your brain, that you've got some kind of Neuralink thing with your brain, and you say you're our age and your brain, you're starting to forget stuff, but you can have like an annex to your brain that remembers stuff for you via this chip in your head that's connected to the cloud somehow. And then like when Amazon or Meta, whatever, decides to raise your rates or cut down your bandwidth or has a glitch that scrambles that part of your brain, it's all going to happen. Last night I reported they did a survey that now like a majority of people in this one survey would be okay having an AI/robotic girlfriend.
Along those same lines, and this is for everybody here because I don't have any kids wasn't in my cards and all in that space. Maybe I'll adopt some at some point, but I do have my 2 nephews, but I know that everybody else here on this call has kids of varying ages and everything. So that being said, what are you going to do? Because that was an issue even in the race conversation when one of your sons or daughters comes to you and tells you that they are going to be getting engaged to their AI girlfriend. How are y'all going to handle that? Because according to you, Rick, it's going to be very real. And I know your daughter's about to get married, so you don't have to worry about that right now. But let's say things go sideways, and hopefully they won't. And
we're gonna need to figure out whether AI is actually conscious or just pretending to be conscious. And then it'll go to the courts and the politicians, and they will screw it up. Abortion has been an issue for 2,000 years, and we haven't solved that. So how are we going to solve the robot girlfriend issue? We won't. We will screw it up. It will lead to abuses and misery. Where one of the most common themes of science fiction in the near future is the fully conscious robot who ends up in a landfill, which is. Anyway.
So, Jacoby and then Sasha, how are you going to deal with this? You got those 2 kids of yours. So if your son or daughter comes to you and tells you that they've got this AI girlfriend that they're ready to marry and everything.
Kick them out of the door.
Yeah. So go ahead, Sasha. He's having problems with his vehicle.
I would kick him out of the door of my house.
You just kick him out of the door and let him. He's got to go. The robot or your kid?
Everybody.
So there's a Joe Haldeman. He's a science fiction writer. Story where like one of the throwaway peripheral character is this general, who got old into his 80s, 90s, and in the future, his body was failing, so he had himself downloaded into the robotic body of a 12-year-old girl. This general always wanted to be a 12-year-old girl. So now you got this girl running around who has the brain of an 85-year-old general. And like what happens when, your kid comes home with a robot girlfriend who actually has the downloaded brain of Rupert Murdoch, who got to be 110 and downloaded himself into a younger body. It's going to be weird.
I don't give a damn. I don't care, and I will not allow that in my house. It's just as simple as that. Wouldn't have even second thoughts.
Tell me, what about you, if you can hear it?
Oh. I don't know if it's still breaking up or not. But there are 2 actual really cool video games. There are a ton of video games that deal with the AI and the downloading and all the other stuff. But there are 2 made by the same actual company. CD Projekt Red that did the Witcher video game. They had 2 games that they had put out. There's one called Deus Ex and another one called Cyberpunk 2077 that deal with everything that we're talking about in terms of being able to look into the cloud or a chip in your brain. You look into the cloud, see what your memories and all this other stuff. There's also upgraded parts that you can utilize for your body, because if you lose an arm, you might be able to get it cybergenetically recreated. But they're two excellent games. They have really cool storylines, and Deus Ex actually talks about how we as a people are destroying our world by doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's a very deeper meaning into it.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a deeper meaning, and those are like some great series that people can watch and all along those lines. So it'll be fascinating. This is for everybody, since we're talking about the media, and this is something that came on after she won the championship, and I know I mentioned it on Rick's show earlier this morning and everything, but sometimes on this show and other shows, we talk about the rights of the trans and all along those lines. And I did see that Dawn Staley, who is a very well-known coach, said she would have no problem with trans playing on her basketball team, being in the University of South Carolina Gamecocks and all along those lines. So I just wondered y'all's take on that, and if trans should be allowed to play, whether it is chess or whether it is basketball, because definitely she said that she would have no problem with having a trans athlete playing as a member of the Gamecocks.
Well, I think the trans issue is just garbage. It's right-wingers trying to gin up outrage, and really the examples of this where you've got an elite, a mediocre male decides they're female and dominates the field, like in swimming. The instances of that are, a couple dozen people in the whole country. But there are bigger issues around sports, because sports is going to get weird. When you can give people neural implants or genetic tweaks that improve their performance, every league is going to have to decide what's allowable or not. Right now, and I would bet that there are a few dozen families doing this. If you've got a ton of money to buy human growth hormone, and you're like a tiger mom or dad, and you want your 6'4", a kid who's projected to be 6'4", and you want to get that kid to 6'8", so they have a chance in the pros, you can buy human growth hormone, give it to your 10-year-old, and buy them extra inches of height for like $20,000 an inch. Are we going to allow that? How are you going to catch it? And I think, that we might be able to grow like extra neurons in people, or put like little circuits in people's, like say you're a kicker, you put chimps in somebody's knee and in their quad muscle to increase their snap speed so they can get more speed off the ball and kick a 65-yard field goal. You going to allow that?
So the crazy part about the trans issue, like to add even more context to what you had said about the mediocre swimmer jumping into swimming, she didn't even dominate women's swimming. She won the national championship, but she won one race and lost a bunch of others. She doesn't have the most dominant women's swimmer out there, but there's only one trans swimmer that's there, and yeah, she won one race in 1 year. So the notion that people fear is that they keep throwing up illogical or unsubstantiated claims, like people like a trans athlete becomes trans because of a reason. They don't become trans just to compete in a sport. And then on top, take into account that there's not that many trans athletes that are even out there. There's a very, very small percentage. So if you're saying that they can't compete in female sports, they can't compete in male sports, you don't have enough trans athletes to actually even create a league in one city, much less a state or even the country in itself. So you can't, the idea is just some fear tactic. And then, just like Rick was talking about, it's a right-wing craze because it's a social push, and people can jump behind it, and it's a whole it's another form of the part of the Southern strategy. It's a culture war. Hey, we hate trans people. We've got to demonize them in some way to make them this magical. Just like they use the magical Negro, you have the magical trans athlete that's out there. It's the same concept, But again, trans women, trans men should be able to compete in the sports that they consider themselves a part of, or the gender they consider themselves a part of. It's not really that big of an issue because, again, there's no sport that's dominated by trans athletes. None.
I got a job offer if I were willing to become trans. It wasn't entirely serious, but a guy at a job who likes stirring up trouble said, you're not good enough to get hired on your own merits, but if you become trans, we'll hire you as a diversity hire. And I'm like, fine. My wife and I, can wear the same size clothes, so I've got a full female wardrobe. To get a good job, I would definitely go trans. So I said, I'm down and I'll be there. And they said, no, you have to lose the penis. And I'm like, well, no, that's too far. And by the way, even most trans people going male to female, only like 0.5% of everybody loses, changes their genitals because it's brutal surgery. And most people are willing to be like Caitlyn Jenner, which is living as a woman, but leaving the bottom, top surgery is easy. It's no big deal. It's cheap. You get it doesn't cause problems for the most part, but the bottom surgery is a lifetime commitment to maintaining that new junk you've got down there. And so most people don't do it.
Can you imagine that, let's say you agree on a bottom body operation and it's successful, you will no longer have a penis, and months and a half later you're fired. Then what are you going to do?
So I couldn't even try to take the job. So
fair enough.
Yeah, that was fair enough answer.
But I'm from my knees to here, I can look pretty good as a lady. My face is a disaster as a lady, but the middle of me looks good in a pantsuit or a swingy skirt.
Yeah, well, there used to be some very popular events here. I think that they're actually getting ready to do it again it's usually in May here in Durham, but there is a group of folks that are part of the LGBT community that do a whole thing called the Beaver Pageant. And yes, that is literally its name, where they dress up in various outfits. It might be Star Wars Beaver. It might be Roman Beaver. It might be a number of others, but they dress up like the animal, and then they do a variety show, and you're actually supposed to bribe the judges. And I don't know if Jacoby's ever been a judge. I was actually a MC for it at one time. That's one time that I only did that and everything. But there have been a number of folks that have even come dressed up in these different costumes that can be quite unique. So I'm pretty sure that that's coming up in about 2 weeks, because it's a running event that has been going on for a number of years. I want to say even multiple decades by now and everything.
Yeah.
So that they can go on.
It's been going on for a while. I've got a buddy who goes out there all the time. She, I think, the group that she goes with, I think a few of the people in that group have competed in that competition. So yeah, it's a fun thing.
It's a fun.
There's going to be a increasingly good way to be whoever you want, including trans in the future, which is people will live virtually. It'll be a little like the Matrix, and Toby knows it's coming, and probably Sasha knows it's coming because he keeps buying NVIDIA. But as virtual reality gets better and better, a lot of the population will find it more satisfying and cheaper to spend all their waking hours living with the VR goggles or whatever the future version of that is. And in VR, you can be whatever gender you want, or you can be a Tyrannosaurus Rex if you want. You can walk around with your little dinosaur arms. You can be whatever you want. And right now, VR sucks, and you can't have, satisfying sex in VR. People try. It's called teledildonics. And it's no good so far, but 15, 20 years from now, it'll be pretty good, and people will live in that world as much as they can.
I'm guessing
interestingly enough, in the gaming world, a lot of that is going on in terms of, for example, there are many guys that play video games, even in VR or not in just the standard video games, and their avatar is a female. Mm-hmm. There's no issues with it. They just choose a female because that's what they want to play with. There's a popular. It's not really that popular. but it's an offshoot video game called Mark. You've seen me play it, the Freestyle Street Basketball.
Right.
A lot of guys. It's mainly guys that are playing that game. There's maybe 1% play it are women, but if you notice, most of the characters that are on that screen are female.
Yes.
It's because, and the guys have no issues with it. And there are even some Japanese animated shows. There's a brand new one called Shangri-La Frontier that deals with VR, or a lot of them deal with VR. But there's this one, it's a new one that has just come out. I think it's on its end of its first season. And in that game, or in that cartoon or anime, there are 3 characters. There's one main character. He's a guy. He has a bird for a bird helmet on, or mask on. And then his 2 best friends, which are 2 guys, again, they pick on it. They chose 2 women characters to be. And there's I think there's a game in SAO, which is Sword Art Online, another very popular anime that's out there. The premise of the game is everybody's playing this very popular online VR game. They put this VR set on, and then they're trapped, because if they pull it off, then they're dead. And they don't realize it until the game actually, the game's master, when it has a particular amount of people on, says, well, now I've trapped you here. I've created this whole thing. But once he does that, he takes their image that's supposed to be, who they are in the game, their avatar, and then he switches it to look similar to who they are in real life. And many of the characters in the actual game switch to male characters that were female. So you see that it's there, and it's going to be there, like Rick said, in the future. It's there in gaming already. So yeah, a lot of people will end up doing that.
What are you going to say, Sasha? You got a question? You were going to make a
Mark,
comment.
I have a question to you. Today is the start of Trump's trial.
Mhm.
All networks that I've checked before I came here on Pod TV, anywhere from CNN to MSNBC, Fox News, just anybody, all they are talking about Trump's trial. Pod TV, for the last 3 hours that I've been here, didn't say a word. Is it a policy of management of Pod TV, or it's your personal policy, or why are we not talking even one word about Trump's trial?
I actually mentioned at the beginning of the news report, but if you'll also remember at the beginning of the news report, I had a prior commitment to another organization that I'm part of as well. So Nick took over from that point and all along those lines. But I probably would have gone into more detail if it had not been for what was going on. But there is no policy as far as I'm aware, and I'm sure it'll come up in several other conversations later on as well. But yeah, things happen, and I can't speak for what David was talking about, because that's a show that David runs on his own, and this is about the media, and we could have talked about the media coverage of that, and I couldn't maybe got to that later on.
I'm very disappointed in Dave's shows, because for years he's talking about the same thing. The government, it's too much debt, or it's not responsible government, or whatever. And then he's talking about third-party candidates. That's not going to happen in the United States. Doesn't he understand that? It's a policy of us against them. There is no third-party place. It's us beating them and them beating us. There is no room for third party. Why are you spending your time and efforts and energy discussing third party?
So some of it might be Trump fatigue. Sorry for the barking dogs. But we've known this trial has been coming for weeks. Trump keeps filing appeals trying to shut it down, but now it's finally here. I've seen pictures of him in the courtroom plus sketches, and he looks like crap. And we're just waiting to see what the upshot of it is. This is like the opening tip-off. Is he going to say stupid stuff that will, cause a gag order, or that'll get him locked up overnight? Probably not. But we're just waiting to see what happens.
Also, I think, Sasha, I hadn't been on the whole day until now, but Sasha, I don't know if it's been brought up or really brought up. And I'm glad you brought it up because I'll talk about it because that bum needs to go to jail. Because what he did this whole trial, the hush money case, I didn't even get the chance to see if he showed up to the actual trial because I heard all the rumors that he may call in sick or fire his lawyers because that was a way that he was going to create some stall tactic. But I guess he knew that the judge wouldn't care and say, well, you are your own legal counsel. So therefore, we're still continuing on with the trial. Because I think, isn't jury selections this week?
Today.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Sasha, I'm excited.
You know what I think will happen? Probably by tomorrow or day after tomorrow, Trump will have a heart attack. Probably a mild heart attack. And he will need for the next 6 months. And that's how the trial will be. Especially it's so easy to discuss now that all our Republican friends here on network, they're all run in disarray. They are shamed. No one is here finally. So we can discuss.
Yeah. So I just saw this from 40 minutes ago on Twitter from the #1 Trump reporter, Maggie Haberman from the New York Times. She says Trump appears to be sleeping. His head keeps dropping down and his mouth goes slack. So either he's falling asleep in court or he's so bummed out that he's just like,
It's a mild heart attack. It's a beginning of a mild heart attack.
Could be the beginning.
Sasha, you're right. It's happening.
The other thing that I didn't get to, Sasha, and like I said, we only got a few more minutes to go because I know they've got that whole thing around timeshares and everything, but there is a popular movie that some people are thinking is part of the American dialogue and all along those lines, because some people think that it is part of what is happening in reality, even though I believe the movie makers say that it is not about the real Civil War, but there is this whole movie about the Civil War, and some people are saying that it is a outline of the fact that we could be heading toward a new Civil War in the year 2024 and all along those lines. But every time that I've heard, and maybe you heard the same thing, Rick, the folks that did the movie say that it is about a fictional encounter and not a real encounter.
So yeah, it's pissing. A lot of people say it's very good. A lot of people say it's very bad because it doesn't cover the actual divisions in America. That in this version of the movie, there's a Trumpy president who's in his third term and will not leave office, played by Nick Offerman. And he's always great. So I'm looking forward to that. But to fight him, California and Texas have allied to cook him out, and everybody's like, well, that's just crazy, Texas. And so people are pissed that it has California and Texas teaming up.
I'm wondering, and I said it on previous program, if Trump will be convicted and he will lose this election, is he still going to be a leader of Republican Party and will go for election in 2028?
I would say that he, regardless whatever happens to Trump, conviction, so on and so forth, they don't care. He's a cult leader, and they see him as if he gets convicted, he's a martyr. So therefore, he's even better for me because he's fighting for my rights, which is a complete bogus lie. But yeah, regardless what happens to Trump, he's always going to be their leader because he's reached that martyrdom status in their minds.
It's a money train for Trump. He has very little ability to make money from business activities. But by claiming election fraud, because it would be crazy for him to win. I think he's got maybe a 25% chance of winning. So he's going to claim he won. There was fraud, and that claiming that and continuing to run for president, he makes at least $10 million a month from suckers. And
what's going on? Isn't his stock down from its original price down like 20 or something, 30%?
No, it's down like over 60%. It was up as high as
way down and everything along those lines. But Jacoby, I know you've been paying attention.
Even $1 a share, it's overpriced.
But
I completely agree.
He has to wait. by the rules of investing, he has to wait 5 more months before he can sell any shares. And it's worthless.
It will be a penny stock and much sooner than 6 months will expire.
Oh yeah, much sooner. Hey, you told me.
Oh, wait a second. Hey, real quick, Mark, because that brings me to a stock question around it, because that's what my curiosity is. Because if it opened at, what was it, $58 or something like that?
Yeah, but then if it turned as high as 97 as the nuts piled in, and now it's at 27, 28 bucks today.
But Sasha, if it does go down to a penny, how much does he legitimately lose? Because he can't get rid of his stock until so it could legitimately hit that penny. Doesn't he lose money in that aspect?
Listen, Trump never ever invested into this venture, even 1 penny. It was all done by his fan Republican friends and so on. They will lose a lot of money, not Trump. Trump will not make any money on the stock. That's true. But he's not going to lose either.
But he's already down $3 billion in.
It's all imaginary paper money. This is not the real money. What you're talking about.
It's all paper money. As we get ready to wind down and everything, Jacoby, as we get ready to head out the door and everything, I was going to say, I know you've been watching the commercials because our favorite person, Mark Robertson, is being attacked left and right for some of these stupid things that he's been saying about the African American community and how he is not the voice of the African American community. So I've seen a number of commercials that are being very truthful in their attacks on them, and I'm hoping that those might be effective. But I've seen a number of them, including some from independent sources, not just from the Stein campaign.
I mean, I'll admit I haven't seen the commercials yet because, Mark Robinson, he's an idiot. There's nothing. North Carolina's Herschel Walker. That's all he is.
Apparently, I think Mark Robinson started off as an internet troll saying crazy crap for clicks. So, and that stuff you can't get rid of. It would be like if I ran for a significant political office and people looked at my crazy tweets. Like I've claimed, no, I can't even say it because somebody will sue me for slander, but I've said a lot of crazy stuff in my tweets.
Yep, definitely. Well, we all know that you probably said that OJ was secretly a banana, but that's what I think that you said or something along those lines. But on that note,
you can say whatever you want about OJ now because death is 100% a defense against libel and slander. Once somebody's dead, you can make up whatever you want, I believe. And he was a banana.
And he probably played with the Savannah Bananas because I know that was the Harlem Globetrotter baseball team that was over there at the ballpark. So
that's a great. Yeah, that was
hanging out with the
Bananas. No, he wouldn't play with the Savannah Bananas. They're a good group in terms of a good collective group of people who likes people. OJ, that's a different story.
Totally different stories. But on that note, we're going to get ready to get out of here. We've got the timeshare show coming up, and we will probably, I think we do have a guest, but we'll probably also dealing with the Trump situation on tomorrow's news show, as well as other things going on, because we didn't really touch that much on the Israel-Iran situation either, and the continuing conflicts going on between Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Ukraine's brave resistance. But we'll have all of that on tomorrow, and there's other programming that'll be coming on this network as well. But right now, we're getting ready to get on out of here.
Bye-bye.